Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to ENG3, ENG3E Term 2A, brought to you by WASA Distance Education Center. My name is Mike Laverty, and today is Monday, February 27th, 2023. This is our 12th class of this term, so class number 12. We are covering the remaining assignments from Unit 2. So we've got unit assignments 12 through 14, and we are covering the remaining textbook assignments from Making It Work on page 140 of our handbook, our textbook, Making It Work. So just a friendly reminder that you are responsible for the unit assignments. So that is the PDF file or the print off of the unit. There's questions in there, and so you'll find every unit has a numbered list of questions that you have to answer, but there's also a list of textbook assignments. And that's only for units 1 and 2. Units 3, 4, and 5 just have the unit assignments, but the first 2 units you have the textbook assignments as well. So we are in week 4 now of classes in term 2A. So approaching the halfway mark. I think week 5 is right in the middle of our course, so that'll be the halfway point of the course. Will be next week, and then after that we will have our March break. So just keep in mind that there'll be no broadcast from March 13th to the 16th. And if you're on Facebook, please join the new keyword new WASA Facebook group. You'll see the word new right there in the title. So we finished off Unit 1. We are very close to finishing off Unit 2 here. So we'll need a few classes. I think just 2. I think just today and tomorrow is all we're going to need to wrap up Unit 2. But we still have some outstanding assignments to review, and we have to cover the culminating assignment because each of your units ends with a culminating assignment. So units 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, they each have a culminating activity. And then once you've done all the assignments and every culminating activity, then you're done your unit work, but you still need to write your final exam. So that's 20% of your final mark, and 80% is going to come from the units, right? So, and 20% will come from your final exam. And the final exam is done in your home community. It's where you are, most likely at your learning center. Someone will be in the room writing it when you do it, so that's called proctoring or invigilating, so you have to set that up. And then I will work with the Learning Center to make that happen, but just know that you have to have it set up in advance. And if we can't do a final exam or a culminating, or if we can't do a final exam, then you'll be assigned a course culminating activity, which is one final assignment, still worth 20%, but that's after you cover all of your unit work. So if you're listening to the radio right now, that's awesome. Please note that you can phone in to the studio at 1-800-465-7144 or 1-807-737-4017. You can also listen on Bell ExpressVu, channel 972, and phone in using those numbers. And if you go to zoom.us, so if you log into Zoom and you enter our meeting ID, then you can join us that way. You can enter the meeting ID, which is on the screen, 417-669-9799. So enter that meeting ID code, and you can join us that way. Check out the videos on YouTube. I taught OLC 4.0 last term, so if you're thinking about taking OLC 4.0 or you're registered in it right now, you can view all 36 classes that we did last term And of course, you can go on to my YouTube channel. That's Laverty. So if you just search Laverty Wasa, there's only one of us out there. If you search Wasa, WAHSA, you'll find a whole bunch of Wasa channels, right? So from other great teachers working here at the Distance Education Center. So, but mine is LAVERTY Wasa, and you will find an ENG3E playlist, right? You'll find 3 of them actually. So one of them is Unit 1, the other is Unit 2, and the other is Term 2A. So it's every video from this term. Reach out to your learning center, to your local DEC if you have any questions about submitting work. I like to mention this before every class, so it is critical to submit work and try to get a little bit done each week. There's many ways you can submit work. You can do it through fax. We have a toll-free fax number, 1-800-463-7852. You can email work to your teacher directly. You can take a picture of it. You can scan it, create a PDF. You can take photos with an app on your phone, and then send those. We accept work on Facebook Messenger, and some students use Google Docs. So many ways to get your work to your teacher. You just need to start submitting it, and if you don't know how to submit work, then please reach out to your DEC, myself, or talk to the WASA office directly. Friendly reminder to send your work in small groups of, say, 5 to 10 is probably ideal. A small batch of assignments like that lets me give you feedback quickly and guide your future work. And please be sure to give me as much information as you can about that particular assignment. Yeah, the course code, the page it was on, if it's a textbook assignment, the unit it's from. Give me as much information as you can. Reach out to me at mlaverty@nnecschools.org. Hit me up on Facebook or Messenger at Laverty Wasa, and phone the Wasa office at 1-807-737-1488 with any questions you might have. Here's a friendly suggested progress. If you've been doing this course for 3 weeks, you should have contacted your teacher, read the study guide, Unit 1 and Unit 2, completed all of the assignments from Unit 1. Completed all of the Unit 1 assignments, completed the textbook assignments, and completed the culminating activities. So at this point, you should have Unit 1 taken care of and working your way through Unit 2. So today's lesson, we'll do our images of the day. They relate to selling. We'll look at the remaining assignments for Unit 2, that's 12 through 14. And we'll have a look at the remaining textbook assignments, making it work. Use the anthology, page 140, and activity 2 from page 140. So we're looking at templates for resumes and cover letters, and we're exploring various ways that we can promote ourselves to others, especially employers. So that's the focus of today's class, is how we sell ourselves, how we promote ourselves, how we give the best versions of ourselves, specifically to employers in the hopes of getting a job, getting a better job, getting a promotion, right? So using resumes, using cover letters, and looking at a couple other ways that we essentially sell ourselves. Convince other people that we're a good bet, we're a good idea. And we will discuss the concept of selling through presentations. And so we're looking at the concept of selling ideas and products and services, right? So when you're enrolled in an English class, you learn how to analyze texts, how to take them apart. But you're also developing communication skills, so you can sell the idea that you're right, and because that's basically what you're doing, right? If you're trying to convince somebody that you're right, if you're making any kind of an argument, Whether you're a lawyer arguing a case, or you're just an employee arguing a point to your boss, or in the case from our reading today, if you're trying to sell a particular product and convince someone to buy it, then you're selling an idea, right? So, and to sell ideas, you have to be persuasive, you have to use the right language, you have to know who your audience is, you have to believe in yourself and what you're selling. So, we'll delve into all of that stuff. So, your success criteria will be to complete the remaining textbook assignments, the remaining unit assignments, that's 12 through 14, by demonstrating your understanding of portfolios, resumes, and cover letters, and to complete the final textbook assignments by demonstrating your understanding of presentations. So a lot to cover, and here we go. So here's 3 cartoons. The one on the top left says, "That's a great question. Come to think of it, I'm not sure what it is I'm trying to sell you." So there you go. So that's the joke, right? So if you're selling an idea, if you're selling a product, then you have to know that product or service very well. You have to be able to answer pretty much any question on it. And if you're selling an idea, or just simply selling the idea that you're right, then you have to know your material very well. So that's the joke there, that he has no idea what he's selling. So he's probably not making a very convincing or coherent argument. On the top right, we only employ first-class salespeople because we produce inferior products. So this is like the darker side of selling, because it is true, right? A good salesperson can often sell someone a product that they don't need, or a product that can harm them and set them back. You only have to look at like alcohol and cigarettes and things like that do a lot of damage to a human body, but they're certainly sold in a certain way, right? And just products that just aren't very good either, right? A good salesperson can move products. So it is good and bad, right? The ability to sell things and the ability to convince others that you're right, it's like a tool, and used for the wrong purposes and put in the wrong hands, being persuasive and being, charming and being convincing and having power over others can absolutely be a negative thing and can lead to some pretty negative consequences. But of course, if used for good, the ability to sell something can be a hugely beneficial force for you and your community and people around you. So it goes both ways, right? Communication is just that. It's just the exchange of ideas, right? And those can be good ideas or bad ideas, right? And then on the bottom, the center, you've got my favorite cartoonist, my favorite cartoon, The Far Side, and we've got Ralph Harrison, the king of salesperson, and he's sailing away from the far north, where he sold people who have igloos freezers, right? So that's the joke there. Where are they going to plug these things in? Why would they buy these things? Where would they even get the money to buy them from? So that's the joke there. So today's class is all about selling. So assignments for Unit 2. Assignment 12. Write a summary of the article, "A Good Portfolio Gives You the Interview Edge." So if this is a textbook assignment that's found in Making It Work on page 140. So if you flip to page 140 of Making It Work, you will see that question. No, sorry, I'm getting mixed up. So this is from the unit handout, but when you read that unit handout, it's referring to an assignment from Unit 2. A good portfolio gives you the interview edge, and that's on page 82 of our anthology. The road ahead. So you need to write a summary of the article. One paragraph containing at least 6 sentences. So read those assignment guidelines carefully, okay? So when it says at least 6 sentences, you've got to provide that, right, to get full marks on your assignment, okay? You have to write those 6 sentences to get full marks, right? And they've got to be 6 sentences that are discussing a main idea, giving some backup points. So I want to explain this question a little further. So you're answering the following question, and you have to write a summary. So when you write a summary of anything, you're going to be answering a lot of questions about the document, about the text, and I've written down 4 questions here that I believe you have to answer to provide a decent summary. So, question number 1, a very important question, is what is it about? The main idea. So this is the really short version. So imagine you've got 20 or less words to explain the whole thing. You've got to shorten this whole text down to 1 or 2 sentences while holding on to as much meaning as possible. So, there's a limit to how much you can summarize something. You can't take like a 10-page essay and summarize it in 3 words, right? You could get like some of the meaning, but it's not going to be enough, right? But if you give someone, say, 20 words, that's like the bare bones. That's the essential meaning of this piece, right? So you got to figure out that main meaning and get it down like really lean. Just what is this thing about? And after you have the main idea figured out, you can summarize a few of the key points that back up, explain, describe, etc. the main idea. So most writing, including fiction writing and poetry, there is a main idea. There's a main core idea that the author is trying to get across, and they get that idea across in many different ways through explanations, descriptions, definitions, detailed descriptions of things, right? So, but they all back up the main idea. So step 1, identify the main idea, and then maybe a few points that summarize, that kind of back up that idea. Identify the type of writing it is, okay? So that's important too, right? So when you provide a summary of something. So when you provide a summary of something, you're telling me what's in that thing, but you're also telling me, like what kind of writing it is. So what's the type, the category, the genre? Is it fiction? Is it nonfiction? Is it a novel, a short story? Is it a newspaper article? Is it a textbook chapter? Is it an essay, right? So tell me what kind of writing it is, right? This helps, right? And if we flip to page 82 of the road ahead, we see that it reads a special advertising feature of The Record, Careers Weekly. The Record, classified, your guide to a successful job search. So it looks to me like this article would have appeared in a newspaper, or in a newspaper, and it would sort of accompany classified advertisements, right? So people would be looking up jobs, they'd be trying to find their next job, or maybe trying to find a promotion within a company they work for. They're looking for work, and then they would read this special feature, right? So it is an essay. It's a very short essay. It's I would call it an essay or a newspaper article, right? So it's nonfiction, and you could mention that it's related. It's connected to the classified ads, the list of jobs that somebody could get. All right, question number 3 you need to be able to answer is, why was it written? So what was the author's primary purpose? To entertain, to persuade, or to inform? So, and primary is number 1 here, right? So An author can often do both. You can tell a funny story that provides information. You can tell a you can write a persuasive article that tries to convince me that like the latest, like the new Ghostbusters movies are way better than the old ones, right? And that article can be entertaining. It can contain a whole bunch of information, but my number one purpose, right? Number one purpose, primary. That purpose kind of like overrules the other one. So, what's the author's primary purpose? They're giving us information about a main idea, but what do they want the reader to think about, to feel? Are they trying to prove a point, tell a good story, inspire people to action, cite specific examples? So, um, what do people do with this article? And that is and that's a really useful way of looking at things, right? How would somebody use this article, right? Why would the author write it? And then so those are like two sides of the same coin. Why somebody would make something and how somebody would use it. So, think about it like a tool, like a handsaw or a chainsaw, or like an impact drill. Why did someone create this tool, and how could somebody use it, right? So what's the author's primary purpose? And how would someone use this article? And then the other question you could answer is, how was it written? So what's the overall tone of the text? Neutral, funny, playful? Is it academic? Is it formal? Is it bland? Is it boring? Is it exciting? And you can offer your opinion on on how. That's instead of who, I should say how. On how well the author expressed the main idea and how well they achieved their purpose. Okay, so that's some other questions you could answer, right? So how was it written? Was it funny? Was it highly informative? And throughout this, you might want to cite specific examples, okay, of how it was done, okay? So that's basically how you summarize it, okay? Tell me the main idea, put it in context, tell me the kind of writing it is, tell me why it was written, the purpose, how somebody would use it, and tell me some information about how it was written, okay? So here's some information about the article. A portfolio is a collection of items that helps to demonstrate the skills that you have. Portfolios are made up of items or work samples that demonstrate your skills, abilities, and personality put together. So you need to put together projects and experiences from previous jobs, volunteer activities, or personal achievements that demonstrate the skills, learning, and personal strengths that make you the best choice. So we're talking about a tool in your toolkit it's beyond the resume and the cover letter. It's a collection of things that you've done that prove you're a good candidate. Here are some quotes from the article itself that I thought were noteworthy. It's likely you have more abilities than you realize, or a simple list of your work experience shows. That's where a portfolio can help out. Once you've chosen the materials you want, show it to someone you trust. He or she will be able to provide you with advice on how to organize your portfolio. Limit the number of examples to between 6 and 12 and try to ensure that each illustrates a specific skill, accomplishment, or trait. So I'm just pulling out direct quotes from the article, and I'm trying to understand in my mind, what's the main point? What are some main details, right? So I think if you can answer those questions, you'll be well on your way to figuring this out. Question 13. Using one of the sample resumes found on pages 79 to 81 in your textbook, Making It Work, or on page 90 of the road ahead, or the one provided at the end of this unit, Appendix A, you are to create your own resume. So you're drafting up a resume and a cover letter. So very useful documents, right? So, and again, why would someone produce a resume? Because they want to get a job. How is a resume used? Well, a resume is used by an employer to assess your, your appropriateness for a certain job, right? And so, with today's class, again, we're talking about selling and we're talking about audiences, right? So, you got to ask yourself, are you the seller or are you being sold on an idea? And this kind of goes hand in hand with reading, right? So if I'm reading a short story, or if I'm reading poetry, or if I'm reading an article about making a portfolio, then I'm being sold on an idea. Somebody's selling me an idea, right? And they're presenting their idea in a way that makes the idea make sense and makes me want to buy into it, right? So you even see that's even kind of in our language, right? When we say like, are they buying into this concept, right? So we buy into things all the time, right? But we only buy in if we think that it's worth our time and our money, right? So if I'm the one applying for a job, then I'm the seller, and the employer is the buyer, right? And are they gonna buy me? Are they gonna sink their teeth into what I have to offer? Maybe, only if I can sort of get their attention through a resume. So, question 13 is the resume. Question 14 is the cover letter. So we'll have a look at those two documents, right? So you do have you do have some examples of resumes that you should consult, and with a resume, it's always good to go off a template. You don't need to reinvent the wheel. And from what I've read and what I've researched about preparing resumes for jobs, is you want to keep it simple, right? The KISS principle: keep it simple. You don't need a lot of different colors. You really only need one font type. You don't need any fancy images. You don't need like a fancy border or things like that. It's got to look good. It's got to look good. It's got to look organized. And a resume, it's just one document. It's usually one page. And I do strongly encourage you to try to get everything on one page. But it's a representation of who you are as a communicator, right? It shows what you're capable of in terms of producing something. So it's a very short document, so it cannot have any mistakes on it. And you don't want to give the impression that you are disorganized or you're not careful. Especially if you're applying for a job that shows attention to detail, right? So that would be a big red flag to an employer, right? So as with anything you produce and write, always great to have a second set of eyes look at it. Especially something like a resume, it's so close to who you are, and you'll forget stuff that you should have put in there, and someone else can kind of help you out with that. But the main thing is just look at a template and just simply reproduce it, and just say, okay, take one of these two templates and just go for it. Where it says their name, you put your name, right? Where it says their address, you put your address, right? So I'm going to walk you through how to do that. So once you decide what sample you're going to use for your resume, and you can find lots online too, you are to draft a rough copy of it and then use a computer, produce a neat final copy, right? So you can do a pencil and paper, just getting your ideas down on the page for your rough copy. The rough copy should look like a resume though, right? It should more or less have the formatting of a resume. So you can do that, on pen and paper, but your final copy is a print off. It's you're typing it into a Word document and producing it that way. There are three basic categories of resumes. There is the chronological resume, the functional skills-based resume, and the combination resume. So the chronological resume, it focuses on recent positions that are that you've done. Those are listed first. Um, so with the chronological resume, your your work experience is number one. Okay, that's what you're focusing on. That's what you're selling to your future boss, right? To your employer, right? You're saying, I'm the best candidate for this job because I've worked in similar jobs, such as A, B, and C, right? So you're listing your work experience above everything else. The functional, sometimes called the skills-based resume, this is when your skills are featured, number one. Typically used when you have a gap in your employment history, right? So if you haven't worked for a while, if you've been on unemployment or been on disability, or for any number of reasons you haven't worked for a while, or you've got a gap in your resume where there was a span of time where you didn't work, or and this is when your skills are number one, right? And they're featured first. And the combination resume is a mix of chronological and functional resume. You know, I would suggest that you do the chronological resume. That's the easiest one to write. The skills based is fine. The combination resume is a little bit harder because you're kind of doing two jobs at the same time. But I would suggest going with the chronological resume. And so when we're formatting a resume, we have, I'm actually going to reverse these two. So it's the format of the resume, and it tells you the order that the information is going to be written. So the order that you're going to write the information on the resume and the order that the employer is going to read it. So number one is your name and address. Number two is your objective. Number three is going to be your work experience. Number four is going to be your education. Should say education / training. It doesn't have to be formal education. It can be your training. And what we're looking at here is our chronological resume. Number 5 will be our skills. Number 6 will be our interests. And number 7 will be references. So you put your name, and I've got an example up on the board. So we've got Sherry Campbell. So you put your name, you put your address, 58 Hopeful Lane, Birch Island, Ontario, P7E5H7, telephone, and email. Now, you should only put contact information on here that you know you can respond to in a timely manner and you'll check, Don't use an email address you haven't used in years. If you don't want them to know your phone number, don't include it, right? But giving your employer phone number and email is good. And it depends on the kind of job you apply for. Usually, if you apply for an online position, not an online job where you do online, but if you apply for the job online, then you typically don't need to include your physical mailing address. But it doesn't hurt to put it in there. it is good for the employer to know where you live, right? And if you don't live in the community of the job you're applying for, then you should probably tell the employer a little bit about yourself, either in the cover letter or maybe even in the resume, and say, like, look, I don't live in the community, but I'm thinking of moving there, relocating. But basically, name, address, and how they can contact you. And that can either be centered at the top of the page or on the left-hand margin at the top of the page. Okay, then you list your objective. So, and I would use a bold, underline, or a larger size font for your headings, right? So you're gonna have headings, right? So the first thing that appears is your name, then your headings, your objective, your work history, your education, your skills, your interests, and your references, right? So I would just pick one way of setting aside the headings and stick to it. Be consistent. So make it bold, make it bigger, underline it. Just do something to make the heading stand out. And your objective is a short statement that explains why you are applying for this job. And most objectives start with the word to, a preposition, right? So in this case, to apply my skills in a community-based organization committed to the well-being of young people. So that's your objective. That's what you want to do, but it also tells you why you are applying for the job. Okay, your work experience. Use the same format. Use the same format for heading as you use for objective. Now you need to list when you worked there, so that comes first. So the general timeline, and usually it's just the month and the year. You don't need to like list the day you started and the day you ended. It's not really that relevant to the employer. They don't really care that you started on a Tuesday, but they need to know a general timeline. So I would just say month and year. So January to August 2022. So list when you worked there, list your job title, list the place of employment, and a really brief description of your main duties. So example, January through August 2022, youth worker, Pelican High Peak Healing Lodge. So when I worked there, what my job title was, where I worked, and my job duties were planned activities for clients and supervise them on field trips. And then you just find a way of organizing that on the page itself that you see fit, right? Then you list your education and your training. I should note that with experience, right, it's most recent to least recent. Same goes for your education and training, right? So you list the most recent stuff you have, and then that's what we mean by chronological. So technically, it's reverse chronological order, right? Where instead of first to last, we're going last to first. So for this, you list the year you graduated or received certification. So you don't necessarily need to say when you started the program and when you finished it. You just got to give it a year, for when you finish it. If you've got multiple credits or multiple things you did in 1 year, then you might want to specify the month, but the year should be fine. So the year you graduated or you received the certification, like for example, if you got your first aid. So list the year you got it, list what you got, your degree, your diploma. I wrote diplomat, but that should say diploma. So when you graduated, what you got, and list where you got it, right? So in 2022, this person got their Ontario Secondary School diploma, and they got it from the Birch Island Distance Education Center. Then you list your skills, organization, mentorship, leadership. So you got a couple choices here. You can simply list skills, or offer, really brief explanations of those skills. If you're only submitting a resume, you want to have more information in it while still sticking to one page. But if you're doing the combination resume and cover letter, then I think you can just simply list your skills and then explain the skills in the cover letter. Same goes for your interests. For me, it's like playing guitar, sketching, photography. Just simply list them. And if you're doing the cover letter, you can list them. Your skills must be relevant to the job. So you're listing your skills because it shows that you're a capable person who can get the job done. So make sure the skills you bring up are relevant to that job. When you list your interests, you're really just showing off that you're an interesting, well-rounded human being, right? You don't need to go into detail. You don't need to explain your interests. They're just there for interest's sake, right? It's just to show you're a well-rounded person with lots of things going on. If those interests sync up with the job, then by all means list those ones, right? But they don't have to be directly related to the job. References, okay. Always best to list people here, but only after you have asked their permission, okay? So really, really important point to note that you can't list anybody as a reference unless you've asked their permission. You don't want to get caught in the embarrassing situation where they phone you a reference and that person is caught off guard. You haven't asked permission. That can put you at risk of losing that job, and it can sort of damage your relationship with that person, right? So you've got to have their permission. And so what you do is you write their name, their position, and their contact information, right? So your reference has a name. You list their position or their former job, like when you knew them. And you got to list their contact info. Okay, assignments for Unit 2. 14 is the cover letter. So again, you've got sample cover letters from your textbook, and making it work and the road ahead. You've also got one at the end of the unit. So for reference, you can respond to one of the above job advertisements, right? So with the cover letter, you're applying for a specific job, and there are jobs found in your unit handout. So you can apply for those jobs, or you can apply for pretty much any job you want, right? For this assignment, you can apply for any job you want. But again, it's your resume, right? It's your resume, it's your cover letter. So apply for a job that you could realistically get with your current experience and skill set, and that kind of thing, right? So similar with the resume, you need to submit a rough copy and a final copy. So you can write your cover letter with a pen and a pad. You can write it down and just scan it and forward that to me. But the final copy's got to be a print off, right? A computer print off. It's got to be what you would hand in to an employer. So up on the screen here, and for those who are just listening, I will read this out, but it's this is an example of a cover letter written by a fictional person named Maxime Francois, and they're applying for a job. And the cover letter is all left justified. So what that means is every sentence, every paragraph in the cover letter is sort of tucked against the left-hand side of the screen. So when we write Word documents, when we use a program like Word or Google Docs, you'll see icons at the top of your screen, and you can center the text, where the text will be right in the middle of the screen. You can right justify it, so it gets stuck as far to the right as possible. But for a cover letter, you use left justification, and you don't indent your paragraphs, right? So every first letter is on that left-hand side margin, and there's one space between your paragraphs. The only time you want to add extra space is between your salutation and your name, and that's the spot where you actually sign the paper. More on that in a couple seconds here. So the first thing you want to have in your cover letter is your header, and your header is your address, then a space, then the date, then a space, and then the company information, right? So it's your address, and that's the same address you have written for your resume. So you're simply just copying that information. There's no change. So it's your address, space, the date, space, the company information. That's the job you're applying for, right? So the name of the company and who should be reading this thing. So attention manager, full name, address, right? So find a name if you can, right? Find a name and spell it right. Very important, okay? If you know the name of the person who's going to be collecting the resumes, and if it's listed in the job title, use that. If you don't know, then you just say attention. So ATTN is short form for attention, which means please give this to. But try to find the person who wrote, or try to find the right person's name. If you can't, just find out who's in charge and just put their job title. All right. Next thing is a salutation. Okay, so if you know their name, it's Dear Nancy Wilson. If you don't know their name, it's Dear Hiring Manager. Or the right job title. Or you can put to whom it may concern. So you may have seen that written in letters before. And we use that to whom it may concern if we don't know who it's going to, right? So, but do your research, phone the company, look at their Facebook, look at their website, try to find out somebody's name, right? And so for bigger companies, it's the boss usually isn't the one interviewing people, and the resume is sent to a human resource manager or a hiring manager. So do your research, find out who's going to read this thing, and put their full name. So Dear, first and last name. Then your first paragraph. Your first paragraph should reference the job you are applying for immediately. That's why you're writing. You should state that right off the bat. Tell the employer why you want to work for them and their team. So in this example, it reads, I'm excited to apply for the web developer position at Craft Pages. I've been programming websites and using CSS to create user-friendly experiences since I was in middle school. So it's always been a passion of mine. So tell them what job you're applying for, and then tell the employer why you want to work for them and their team, right? So my name is this. I'm applying for this job, and you should hire me for this job because a few reasons, right? So introduce who you are and tell them why you want to work for them. Second paragraph, discuss your most recent relevant experience, skills, and qualifications that make you the right person for the job. Okay? So talk about where you're working right now or your last job, right? So especially if we're doing a chronological based resume, we're going to talk about our most recent work experience and just talk about that in detail. And then if you can, try to make connections to this new job. So in my current job or in my last job, I worked on these projects, and that's going to help me do well with you guys. Third paragraph, talk about your skills, experience, qualifications that make you the right person for the job. So after your most relevant work experience and skills, then your third paragraph is sort of talking about like the next in line stuff. And then you want to wrap this thing up with a closing paragraph. So thank the employer for considering your application and provide a call to action or your next steps. So thank you for your consideration and time. I'm looking forward to learning more details about the position and company. If you have any questions about my qualifications, please feel free to call or email me, right? So give the employer next steps, give them an action they can follow. Just simply thank them for their time, and that's it. And then you've wrapped this thing up. And then a complimentary close and signature. So use a formal sign off such as sincerely, regards, best, respectfully. Then you do maybe like 3 or 4 spaces, and then you type out your name, and then you always sign the paper copy. So it's good to have a real signature on the page. So you print off the piece of paper, leave a space for your signature, actually sign it, and then once it's signed, you can scan it, take a picture of it, upload a PDF, but don't forget the actual signature. That's very important. All right, so that took much longer than I anticipated, but that's the way it goes. So we will have to come back tomorrow to talk about the textbook assignments. But I do have a couple of minutes, so I'll just briefly introduce the topic. So if you flip through the textbook, or sorry, if you flip through the anthology, you'll notice that there are 5 units in the anthology. They are, Unit 1 is preparing for the journey. Unit 2 is setting out. Unit 3 is the journey. And Unit 4 is attaining the quest. And Unit 5 is what the future holds, right? So each unit of our anthology has that theme. So if we look at, say, setting out, Unit 2, all of these articles should be, somewhat related to that theme of setting out on the journey, right? So there's the preparations we do to get ready for a journey, and then there's like the initial steps that we take to get out there and to complete our journey. So this is like when we set out for the journey, we leave home and we're trying to get a job, or we're working our first jobs. A good portfolio gives you the interview edge. You can see how that's about setting out, because you're setting out to get a job. Same goes with classified advertisements, things like that. Covering letters and resumes, right? So you've prepared yourself for the journey, but now you're setting out. You're trying to get that job. You're trying to get that employment. So that is where we will have to leave things for today. But when we come back tomorrow, we'll have a look at this one. So you have to write 2 presentations. You have to write a presentation that discusses the units, and then a presentation where you're selling a product or a service. But more on that tomorrow. Thanks for tuning in.